Hello, Internet! Shouth here, and it's time for another episode of ShoutStone. So today, we have some changes that are coming to the game in an upcoming patch that we really wanted to talk about. Some big card changes that are happening, for balance efforts, of course, as per usual. So let's break them down right now. You can find the article linked in the description below, so don't worry about that, but let's go ahead and get to the cards at hand. So first up, once again, Unleash the Hounds is on the edit block, I guess. Unleash the Hounds is now going to have its mana cost reduced from 2 from 4. So according to Blizzard, the reason behind this change is that Unleash the Hounds was intended to give hunters their own form of AoE, and to have that kind of synergy with other hunter cards, or with other beast cards, and some other hunter ability cards and things like that, but the old cost was just not adequate for that. So it will be cut in half as far as its cost goes, which could really see it get a little more use out there, which would be nice. Next up, for the Mage players, Pyroblast has had its mana cost increased from 8 to 10. So a change very similar to Mind Control from the Priest deck. Pyroblast basically is getting this change because it became a real staple of a Mage deck to do 10 damage and then nail you with 2 Pyroblasts and game over. So their intent is that Blizzard wants Mage players to be a little more interactive with the opponent to try and achieve victory rather than just delaying the game until Pyroblast, basically. So this could help with sort of forcing their hand like that. And it does make it a little more difficult to get that kind of card in play because you don't have that extra mana to use, and it's saved until the very end game, which is always helpful. Another very interesting change for our Warlock players is that Blood Imp is now a 0/1 minion with stealth, but instead of providing a blanket +1 health to every other minion on the field, at the end of the turn, Blood Imp just gives a random friendly minion +1 health. So, the reasoning behind this is that the Warlock basically has a lot of very strong 1-cost minions, and it made their Warlock Rush deck a lot more powerful than they wanted it to be. And this is a pretty big change, because the Blood Imp is a really big staple card of the Warlock deck, and it's usually used for the intended purpose of giving that extra point of health really early on in the game to everything you play, which makes it really tough to try and respond to a lot of the minions that a Warlock can play, whether it's a, Warlock similar minion or a neutral minion of any kind. So this can be a very powerful change for Warlock decks and for Warlock play. Now Warriors. Warriors are going to actually see 2 changes in this upcoming patch. Warsong Commander and Charge. Not the ability, but not the passive ability that's on many cards, but the actual card, Charge. Anyway, Warsong Commander has been reworked, and it's now going to read, whenever you play a minion with 3 or less attack, give it Charge. Now this is a change from its old ability, which was basically a blanket charge for any minions that you play. That's a huge, huge change, and I'm going to explain the reasons behind that change as well as the change to Charge itself. Now Charge has been reworked to cost 3 mana, and its new power is to give a friendly minion +2 attack and charge. Now the reason behind these changes is that both of those cards were basically key components in what has been well known as the one-turn kill, or OTK decks, which allows you to kill an opponent in one turn without any, without requiring any cards on the board. So the intent, of course, is that Blizzard wants the game to be about playing minions, fighting for board control, and not about waiting for the opportunity to play a huge combo and beat your opponent in one turn without your opponent being able to stop it. So these changes, I think, are certainly a good way toward that. The Warsong Commander change, again, is huge. I see Warsong Commander played a lot, and that's absolutely one of the big powers behind it, is that basically you can dump whatever you want on the field and deal massive damage that your opponent can't respond to. So I think this change is going to be really helpful for any players dealing with OTK warrior decks, or really warrior decks in general. It's a nice change to kind of balance things out a bit. Next up, We're getting to some of the more neutral minions now. Abusive Sergeant now has been changed to a battle cry of giving a minion +2 attack until the next turn. Now, Abusive Sergeant was changed to make it similar to Dark Iron Dwarf, which has also been changed, and I'm going to get to that in a second, and also to make it a little more versatile. Now, Dark Iron Dwarf has been changed so that its battle cry only lasts until the end of the turn as well. Now, this was made to just reduce the overall power of the Dark Iron Dwarf and put it more in line with minions of its cost level. And they also designed it to be similar to Abusive Sergeant in terms of its battle cry, so that you're not forced to permanently buff one of your opponent's minions if you are stuck with just playing that card alone. So instead of it being a permanent buff, it'll just last one turn. So that puts both of those cards on pretty even footing when it comes to the power that they have. Next up, change to Defender of Argus. Now, Defender of Argus was a 3/3 minion that provided taunt to the creatures that flanked it. Instead, it will still provide the taunt buff, but it's been reduced to a 2/3 minion. Now, Defender of Argus was basically a staple in a lot of decks, and with a good reason. But they wanted to try and spice things up a bit and make it a little more varied as to the type of cards you want to choose. Whenever a card falls into that kind of required place like this, they tend to want to change it up and find out why it's so required. And it's really because of its power and stats. So it might still be a very useful card, it's just a little less powerful. You know, especially when it's a neutral minion like this and things like that. That's not what they want to do. Next up, Novice Engineer, which is a 1/2 minion that does a battle cry for a card draw. Now, Novice Engineer was reduced from a 1/2 minion to a 1/1 minion. And it was used a lot in some non-rush decks due to its cost and power. And the change is exactly the same as the Defender of Argus, they just want a little more variety. I don't see it... I see it still being pretty useful. The fact that it's only a 1 health card now does change the dynamic of that minion a lot, but its battle cry is still useful, of course, in the sense that you get the card draw off of it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that fits into the new meta as all these other cards are changing around it. Alright, and lastly, Sylvanas Windrunner has had her mana cost increased from 5 to 6. Now, Sylvanas basically had power and stats that made it pretty dang strong for a 5-cost card. So it was an automatic fit for most decks. Yeah, Darby's not happy with that change. Anyway, again, it's about options. You know, they don't want cards that make it naturally assume that you're going to put this card in your deck because of its power level. So they made these changes to try and make it a little more option-orientated. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So they put it more in line with minions that cost 6 mana to play, and give you a little bit more variety. So, well, there you have it. Those are the changes coming in the next upcoming patch to Hearthstone. Do keep in mind that basically all of these expert level cards can be disenchanted for their full value for a limited time once the patch goes live, as per normal. So if you're not happy with the card changes and you want to get rid of them, you can still do so and get the full value out of the disenchantment before their value is changed, if it even gets changed at all. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of ShoutStone. I just wanted to go over some of those changes, and don't forget that we are still accepting signups for our tournament, which is going to be, we're going to be taking signups for that for the next month till February 11th. So do take a time to watch the video. I put the link up on the screen right now. Watch that video. You know, do that. And then also you can check out the debut episode of Games in 60 Seconds, which is up right now. So I encourage you to go check that out and let me know what you think. But anyway, again, that'll do it. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you folks next time.